And we are live. Happy Wealthy Wednesday. It is my favorite day of the week. And today's guest, I am so fired up. I call him the debt master. Because truly, when I think about debt, debt can be a dream killer for so many people. It can kill the dream of what? Your dream life, your dream home, your dream car, your dream vacation, even the dream of retirement. If you have too much debt or debt that is just out of control. And even to me in retirement, my belief, what I teach my clients is true retirement is being completely and totally debt free. That means no mortgage, no student loans, no credit cards. And that for a lot of people can seem impossible. But my guest today makes the impossible possible. So please give it up and welcome the amazing Mr. Dennis Williams Jr., the founder, president, and creator of the Cash Map app. So please introduce yourself, Mr. Dennis.
Leah, thanks for the opportunity and the kind words to go with it. It's Cash Map is really two simple things. It's learning to use the bank's products to shift the money that I pay in interest to just huge principal payments, enabling me to eliminate debt quickly. And it just has such a broad application of use.
That's awesome. I'm excited. You know, of all the guests that I've had to this point, I say all the guests, I've been doing this like 2 months. Okay. But to date, your philosophy, your product is really the most in alignment with what I teach with the Wall of Wealth. Oftentimes, Dennis, clients ask me, do I save and invest or do I pay down my debt? And a lot of people kind of get lost in the weeds in this, but my answer is both. We got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time because debt is a habit, but also is saving and investing. And for a lot of us, it's an atrophy muscle. It's something we haven't developed. And people think, well, I'll start saving when? I'll start investing when? Let me pay off this. Let me pay off the mortgage. Let me pay off the cars. Let me get the kids through college. But then guess what? It never happens. And that's when it can be truly a dream killer. So take us kind of back, Dennis. How did you create this? What is your inspiration? Because I just think you're a genius. You truly are. What you've done is really to be commended. And I will say this, let me preface this. I've been in the industry now 18 years, and I have met many people who have products that are debt accelerators in some form or fashion. And I've seen these advertisements. I even have clients who have purchased products that have cost them thousands of dollars in an attempt to leverage their debt and try to pay that off quicker. And your product is so intuitive, it's user friendly, and also does a lot of things, gives them a lot more ability to kind of play with the tool. So tell us how you came up with this. We want to know. We want to get into that genius mind of yours.
Well, probably maybe the only, as one person told me once, you're sick. Who spends their time digging into this to kind of figure it out?
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, kind of what I bumped into, Leah. I have an MBA in finance, and I've been a CFO. And they don't talk about this at all.
No.
So the real beauty of it is that the solutions are actually one of the few things that are win-win, both for the user as well as the bank, as well as a financial advisor. There are literally no losers in this proposition. And so back to your point of how did I run into it? I had been I've been vice president of benefits and risk management for a large long-term care network in Washington. And the owner happened to have a small mortgage company in a town right near where Microsoft is, called Kirkland, and he wasn't making money, and so he wanted somebody who he could trust, because that's the other thing that's really big to me, is transparency and transparency, so that if you make a mistake, I say I make a mistake. He didn't have that, so he wanted me to go into this mortgage company and just see what we could do. And one day, this account manager from this bank in Australia, this is before the recession, came in and told the loan officers, how would you like to show your clients how they can pay off their debt in half the time? Now, this part got me. Without changing your spending.
Yeah.
And the interest rate doesn't matter.
Wow.
Now, I just thought, that sounds like a total scam. And the guy who came into the office, he couldn't describe why it worked. Consequently, the loan officers, they would attempt to show this product to their clients, most of them would not buy the product because they it just didn't sound right to them, and they'd never heard of it before. So that's what kind of ticked me off, to kind of figure out, why does this work, and is it real? And once I did that. I spent hours starting with creating 40-year cash flows.
Wow.
Using Excel. And as a part of that, I figured out what the magic was behind it. And it's not magic at all. It's actually really, really simple. And then from that, I happened to show it to some friends. I lived in Hawaii for 27 years. And so, that's where my wife's from, and my parents were there as well. And so I happened to go back home and show it to a couple friends, and they volunteered money to say, this is phenomenal. Why don't you take it to the market? And I had no idea what that meant. I had absolutely no idea. So this has been a journey of discovery for me. And so from that, we started by creating the application just for the iPad. And then expanded it. And just to make the point, one of my shareholders, my friends, they showed this concept to 21 of their friends.
Wow.
Not a single person, that should have told me something back then, that not a single person would buy into it, because they thought it was a multi-level marketing scheme. And so the $1 million question was, how can something, as the adage goes, if it looks too good to be true, there's probably something about it that's fishy. And and certainly that has been the case, and that's kind of why I'm honored to be here with you today, because most financial professionals, because they don't understand this and they like to be the expert, and we're not trained in this at all.
Right.
Consequently, it gets dismissed.
Wow.
And so that's how I got into this.
That is so good. So, and I really receive those kind words, Dennis, because I always say I don't have to be the smartest person in the room. I just have to know the smartest person in the room. That's all there is to it. I don't know everything. And for people to think, even financial professional, financial advisor, none of us know everything. And so it really takes a collaboration, a team. And I talk about that. It's referred to as a virtual family office. It is leveraging a team-based model where we can bring in strategic partners under one umbrella. So important. And what that does is it creates better outcomes for the clients. It truly, truly does. Because I think in our society in general, and I'd love to hear your feedback on this, when I talk to clients, oftentimes they have good income, they've got real estate, they have $1 million or more in their retirement accounts, and they've got an emergency fund, and they have all these great things. But when it comes to the debt, it's almost like a blind spot. They're like, oh yeah, by the way, I've got, 2 car notes. We've got about, eight, 900,000 left to pay on our mortgages. um, and yeah, we've got about $250,000 in student loans, but we want to retire in, a week or two or a year or a couple of years. And they just don't even think that that's something that needs to be addressed. What is your experience with that? How do you find that is true?
Well, I find a couple things true as I talk to people is at the most basic level, I frequently find out that in households, partners are not on the same page about money.
Huge.
Right? They're
Yeah.
not on the same page. So then it's a source of disagreement. There's not consensus. So that's one issue. The next issue that I frequently deal with is kind of what you're saying, is that most people, I can think of one case right now that they're making over $200,000 a year, and they had over $101,000 in debt, and they had no emergency fund whatsoever.
Right.
And they were negative cash flowing. So what do I mean when I say negative cash flowing? It means that they're spending more than they're making.
Right.
Right. And so in this particular case, they were just getting totally eaten up in interest costs, especially with the interest rates going up the way they have.
Right.
Using the system of smartly using the bank's products for this particular family, while they were negative cash flowing, I was able to reduce their total interest cost in 12 months down to $180 of interest for the year.
And what were they paying previously?
Well, it was all loaded up on credit card debt for one thing. And so, he never gave me a total figure, but it had basically wiped out their savings.
Right.
And they still had not gotten a handle on the spending issues.
Right.
So this system did that. And then the other thing that they were doing was they're leaving all their cash sitting in the checking account. And so that's one of the principles, is never leave your cash idle. Keep it working for you all the time. Okay. But most of us don't know what our options are to keep it working. And when I say keep it working, I'm not talking about putting it in the stock market.
Right.
Right. But one little secret that most of us don't know, that I just found out, was that, for example, if you were to use an online savings account, which are now running 4.25%, before there used to be a restriction on how many withdrawals you could make per month. That's not true anymore.
Nice.
So here's a simple, safe opportunity that you don't have to lock up your cash. And so when I showed them that, the interest that they would earn in 1 year brought their net cost down to about $100.
Wow.
And this is while they were negative cash flowing.
Wow.
Just by making a few simple adjustments. And then the final piece, which this family did, most people don't know where their money actually goes.
Right.
And arguably, why should you? because the downside about using that dirty little word called budgeting is it usually means that I have to live this terrible existence of being denied all the time, and I can never see what the outcome is. Well,
Right.
the app that I created gives people that vision, so it actually gives them a why. And so I don't consult. When I do consulting, I'm not telling them how to change their spending. We create
Yeah.
a vision, and then they back into it, because for the first time now they see a reason to do something, and all of a sudden people get on the same page.
Yeah.
And I call it bringing your future into your present, because now, as one client told me once, she went into Neiman Marcus, she saw a cute purse, and she and her husband made good money. And she said, for the first time, I could leave the purse on the shelf and not feel bad about it, because I know where my money's going and what I really want.
I love that so much. There's a lot to unpack there. So, when you talk about couples, you're right. And I always look to see who's the spender and who's the saver. There's usually one, hopefully, there's one of each. The disaster is when there's two spenders together. Two savers are wonderful. They're both budgeting. I have one client that's like that, and they have millions of dollars, and they've done it because they're both savers. However, if we have two spenders together, or one that's the more dominant partner and they're the spender, they're really the decision maker, then that causes a lot of resistance. And that's really why, one of the reasons why I think that money is really one of the biggest cause of divorce, because they're not on the same sheet of music, and they don't know how to reconcile that. They don't understand. And one thing I love also is that you said, never give people a budget. Listen, you say the word budget, you're not, nobody's going to want your help. And nobody's going to ever talk to you. They're going to hear crickets. That's right. But it's a spending plan. And I never put my hand in their pocket and say, you can't spend this, you can't spend that, sell your car, mortgage your children. I mean, I just don't believe that that is realistic. People will resist that. They're going to feel punished. They're going to feel punitive. So I allow them the opportunity. I educate them, and then they make the decisions. And once people can bring their awareness to their money, that's when they start to make those decisions that are probably wiser, right, for their future. So I love that you said bringing your future into the present. And it's really an exchange principle.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to exchange, not taking that Neiman Marcus bag, in exchange for what? If you put that $50, that $100, that $500, that $1,000, what could it do for your future? So I love that. So you kind of shared, which was my next question, a story. So tell us a couple of your success stories. And I know you've got many, 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 but just give us a couple of examples of families that you've helped recently and what their transformation has really meant to them. Because the money is one thing, but really what has it done for their household, for their marriage, for their lifestyle, for their peace of mind?
I can think of a couple, actually. One couple, well, I met him because he found me. He found my webpage, and so when we finally connected, we were kind of going back and forth for it's probably about 4 months. And as I started sitting down and kind of back to the questions you'd asked me before, one of the first things that I do with people is I ask them, this is a real story with my neighbor. I got a phone call from a neighbor. This is probably 10 years ago now. And they said, Dennis, do you have any good sources for credit counselors? We're spending more than when they were making, and we're not making any headway. Right. And I'm very cautious about credit counselors. I've run into situations where, for example, this was in Canada. I live in Bellingham, Washington, 20 minutes from the Canadian border, and my church community is in the Lower Mainland. And this person had been told that they could ignore their credit card balance because it's not secured.
Yeah.
And long story short, Capital One came after her, and a judgment was awarded to Capital One to take her house.
Whoa.
And I was then asked to come in and assist, and was able, through some local connections, to find someone who would take on the debt to relieve Capital One so she could keep her house.
Wow.
Literally, we got the deal done 2 days before the court case in which she would have lost her house. It could not have been any tighter.
Wow.
And so because of that experience, like I said, I'm very cautious about credit counselors. And I've had other cases in which people who their situation could be salvaged, but again, they recommended the person just walk away from the debt.
Yeah.
And an attorney be called in, spending additional dollars for that when it wasn't necessary. So this neighbor calls and gives me this, and I proceed to run off a few alternatives. I said, "What about this? What about the cable? What about eating out? What about everything I offered?" The person said no. So I said, "Can you come down to the house?" They came down, and I gave them each a piece of paper, and I said, "Please tell me over the next 5, 10, 15 years, what are the things that are most important to you to be able to achieve that if you didn't, you'd be kicking yourself in the backside?" Well, they had never done that before. Each of them did it, then they got together, and fortunately, they were in alignment. So once they saw that they were in alignment, then my next question was, prioritize those items, and now look at your spending and tell me, look at what you're currently spending against these things you say that are important to you.
Yeah.
Now put them together. All of a sudden, the things that I had offered, they put it on the table, and they solved their problem in an hour's time as relates to going forward. They didn't need to have a credit counselor.
Right.
They just simply needed to have priorities. So when so from that perspective, this individual who I was speaking with, he wanted to move forward. He said they had lots of debt, like in the tune of over a couple $100,000. And I said, "Well, okay, well, how about your wife?" He said, "Well, she just told me last week that she's filing for divorce." So, and they'd always kept their money separate. About that time, she comes walking in the door, had this wary look on her face. And he says, "Well, you go talk to her one-on-one." So we did. She saw what I was proposing. We got back together again, the three of us. And then I asked the question. I said, "Okay, are we going to create 2 cash maps, or are we going to take one? If you do one, it's going to be clearly much more effective." Before he could even answer, she said 1. So this would have been the first time in their marriage that they had actually ever put their cash together.
Wow.
If you were to take a picture of him at that point in time, you would have thought he was in the process of having a coronary.
Wow.
The reaction was shocking. Now this family, she had miscarried. She can't, and so they wanted to have a child, via surrogacy. She shared with me that he had come home with an $81,000 vehicle and hadn't talked to her.
Wow.
So no wonder she's pissed.
Wow.
And we were able to kind of put the pieces together in which, they had a mortgage that's going to be around $1 million plus their credit card debt. They're going to have the whole thing paid off in full in 10 to 11 years.
Wow. See, that's so beautiful.
And they're still together.
That is so, so beautiful. Dennis, you're really a marriage counselor, is really what you are.
Well, it's just a matter of, again, how do you get people on the same page?
Right.
Aligning and identifying what's most important. And I had nothing to do with creating a budget for them.
Right. Yeah.
All I asked for was 1 month's spending plan.
Right.
And once they saw what that would do by using these unique set of bank products,
Right.
they were motivated to then look for other changes in their spending, and I had nothing to do with that process.
Right. Right. I think that is so key, is that if you can't see the end result, then it's too painful.
Yeah.
Right. Then if we're going to start working out, but we don't see any goal in that, we don't have anything that we're trying to maybe get into an outfit or whatever it is, or be able to play with our children, then it has no reasoning. There's no value behind it. It has no credibility. But when you can really see where you're going is what really incentivizes people, and then they can make their own decisions, because then it's not punitive. I just don't believe in these professionals that we see that are very popular in a lot, and they start, almost shaming people. You shouldn't want this, you shouldn't want that. Listen, we're going to spend our money. That's the key. That's what it's there for. So it's just making those little changes, right? It's those little changes that over time that have huge and significant results. What you did for that family is, you can't even quantify that. You really can't.
No. And it's just, again, it's great every time when I go back and talk with them. So that's the other thing, is I'm not in the business of tying people to me, but rather I'm just simply sharing something I learned and a skill that I think every American household should know, because it would be transformational.
Nice. The other part that I want to kind of touch on that's really invisible to a lot of people that they may not know is that bankruptcy, if people are thinking about that as an option, it stays with you for many years, and it will impact many things, not just your credit score, but it can impact what you pay for insurance. And in life insurance, it can make you uninsurable. So there's a lot of things that you have to consider if somebody is thinking about it. I would really implore you to reach out to Dennis, because really what I've seen him do is really, it's miraculous. That's why I call him, he's such a genius. I mean, he's so humble, but I think what he's put together, I wouldn't geek out on Excel spreadsheets for 40. Like that's not happening for me, but we're so grateful to you that you do, because you're able to bring that knowledge to us and distill it for us human people, right, in a way that we can understand it for us mere mortals. So I love that. Can you tell me, because a lot of people struggle with student loans. That's one thing that I think gets so many people. They've had it for years, decades, and they would like to retire. I see so many baby boomers. They have so many assets, but they still have the student loans. Tell us some success stories that you've had with student loans, or have you had any success with student loans?
I've certainly, just to be transparent, well, this couple that I just spoke about, they had student loans, and that was a part of the package. Being able to accelerate and get rid of that as well. One of the things that people do not understand when they put their loan on deferral is it does not mean that the interest
Right.
is not building. Again, I just
Right.
took on a client yesterday, and they live in the East Coast, and she has an SBA loan that she's thrilled that she took, and they gave her a what's the word I want? I gave her a period of time because of her situation in which she did not have to make payments.
Right.
Well, they didn't tell her that in the process of not making payments, the interest clock was still running.
Yeah.
Right. So that would be my other little tip here. But when I have done student loans, like I can think of a couple of people, they're usually able to accelerate getting that student loan, getting rid of it if it's 15 years, somewhere between 2 and 4 years.
Okay.
And again, I'm talking about someone who, I'm not talking about professional programs like coming
Right.
out of dental school or
Right. Right.
school, like dentists come out of school with $1 million in debt. It'll certainly work for them as well.
Right.
But I will say I'm talking about people who, when they end up getting out of school and they got $35,000-$40,000 in debt, so they're not making big money. But they might have, after they pay their bills, they've only got, say, $250 to $400 a month that's left,
Right.
and they're feeling squeezed that they can't enjoy life at all.
Right.
And maybe that's the other thing I should also say, which I think I'm the only one that I've heard of. For the solution, ideally, I like people to have at least $100 left over after they pay their bills.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the example that I gave you of the one individual their family were making over $200,000 and they were negative cash flowing. Well, using the system that I show people how to do, we're able to dramatically reduce the interest cost. But just by making a couple simple little tweaks in the way they spend.
Yeah. You call them simple little tweaks, but they're blind spots. They're areas that people are unaware of. It's that compound pounding over time has dramatic results. It's making me think about when people are thinking about their student loans, again, it's something that they just don't consider that they can ever pay off. And I meet so many people who are in their 20s or 30s and they have three, 400, $100,000 in student loans. And I just can't imagine the feeling of that, let alone making that payment, let alone deferral. I mean, these are things that just don't go away. And what I love is that you can help somebody who has just $100 a month extra in their cash flow. Almost anybody can carve out $100 a month. Maybe, doing some little things so that they can free up that $100 so they have that positive cash flow. So kind of unpack a little bit the process. Why does this work? Why is it so powerful? Why can you do almost what seems like for a lot of us impossible?
Well, the magical bank tool that I discovered that we are not taught is called, it has one of two names: the average daily balance or the daily interest charge. Most of us only know about the average daily balance from when we get nailed on our credit card. So what is the average daily balance? Well, literally take the balances during the month from the 1st to the 30th, let's just say, and then you come up with what that average was for those 30 days. So, just so everybody kind of has an idea of when I say average, what do I mean?
Yeah.
Is you take the balance for every day and just add each balance up for the 30 days and then divide it by 30. That's the average.
Okay.
Okay. And so that's what banks use to either charge us interest, which is what we're familiar with in a credit card,
Right.
or pay us interest
Right.
in a savings account. Now, none of us have been paying attention to it because for so many years, the interest that the banks pay is next to nothing. So why bother to even care about it?
Right.
Well, it matters when it's a debt.
Mm-hmm.
So the example that I give, you've heard me ask you this question before, Leah, and so you already know the answer. If I could find a bank to pay me 20% interest, doesn't exist, but if there was one, how would you make the most from that bank? Well, you put your money in the account as early as you can, right? Because you want to keep the balance high all month long. So if you're going to keep the balance high, when would be the best time to pull money out to pay your bills?
Yeah, the very last minute that the bills are due.
The very last day that they use to calculate it. And so I would reschedule the dates of my due dates of my bills to like a couple days after that last day. So in other words, I take the money out that I need to pay, I put it in my checking account, use my bill pay, and then allow for a couple days for it to hit to pay my bill on time. By doing that, I get the most money out of the bank.
Wow.
Right? I mean, there's that because they're going to pay on the average daily balance. And so if I want to maximize the average daily balance,
Right.
I want to keep my balance as high as I can all month long.
That's so good.
Right?
That definitely is a secret. That definitely
that is the secret to what I teach. That's the secret sauce.
Mm-hmm.
There's really nothing more to it than that. Because now when it's in a debt, it has the impact of doing exactly the same thing, but now it minimizes the interest cost.
Right.
Right? So because the average daily balance was going to be low, I can use a debt instrument at 30% to still help someone save money. Because a higher interest rate of a small number is still a small number.
That's right. That's the rule of 72, the rule of compound interest. And I don't know about you, Dennis, the average credit card, I've been in the industry 18 years, and I've seen the average credit card's interest really ebb and flow. Recently, the average credit card that I see families paying are over 24%.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen 29, 34% interest, and people are unaware. They don't even look at that. They don't even consider, what do they talk about? Oh, well, I can make the minimum payment. I think that we have been bamboozled to believe that if we can afford the minimum payment, then that means that we should buy that, consume that product, that service, that car, that mortgage. What is it really costing us?
Yeah.
What is it really costing us?
Yeah.
And I've never seen a family with a lot of debt who has everything else in order. Usually when people have a lot of debt, there's a lot of tension within the marriage, even if they're making those minimum payments, even if their credit score is high. I think debt creates a lot of stress, and it's invisible stress because it's there lurking all the time in the background. right? It's always there. We're always aware of that. We open the bills. We know they're coming. Every time we swipe the card, maybe we feel good for that moment, that little panacea. However, we know at the end of the month, what we're going to receive is that bill. And oftentimes people don't even look at the interest and what it's costing them. What would you say is maybe, so I think that's an invisible thing. What would you say is something that's invisible that people don't realize is really costing them more than they really consider?
Well, I think for too many people that I've run into, there's a sense of feeling trapped in hopelessness that they don't want to even look at it anymore.
Yeah.
So because they don't feel like there are any solutions.
Right. Right.
So it's not that they don't know something's not right. They just don't feel they have any options. And again, I'm not talking about, this isn't about people on the lower end of the income scale. I see this on both ends.
Right.
And again, the other item here that I want to say is this is not merely a situation of people who don't have enough cash or it's too tight. This strategy can be used if you're looking at purchasing investments, or if you're wanting to use this as a way of, let's just say if you have something like a whole life policy or a indexed universal life product, you've taken money out, a loan from the policy. And when you take the money out, you're incurring a 4% expense, which of course is reducing your benefit until it gets put back. Well, this same approach will accelerate refunding your policy to reduce the interest expense that you're taking a hit for in the policy. There are so many applications as far as using the principle. And so that's the other thing, is because it is a new concept. I created as you know, and let me back up a second. For me, transparency is everything.
Yeah.
And so whatever a person's numbers are, I've created a tool where they can actually see why it works.
Right.
So they don't have to worry about thinking in terms of, this seems too good to be true.
Yeah.
They can see the calculation. They can see how putting their dollars to work can dramatically shift the amount of money they pay in interest to now shifting and being able to reduce the debt that they want to deal with, be it taking money for an investment or whatever the application is. The applications are just, and the other thing about it is we do this to preserve cash.
Right.
So
Absolutely. I
yeah.
agree. Cash is king. Let me kind of rewind a little bit. When it comes to like taking money out of a permanent policy, let's say a cash value policy, that comes in many forms and fashion. Absolutely. There are whole life policies that you do have oftentimes a percentage rate that's charged you to be able to borrow your own money. Also, there's other policies that you can use that where you're not borrowing your own money, you may be borrowing from the death benefit. And so that to me is really where this can be really magnified, because if you are borrowing from the death benefit, your cash stays there working. At the same time, you're using the bank's, the insurance company's money to what? Pay down this debt. That's called, to me, that's called a win-win-win. That's using the same money not once, not twice, but 3 times. I know that's kind of a lot, but if you'd like to know more, I definitely would like to talk to you. And also, one thing I don't know that people have, you've talked much about, is that this tool allows you to kind of play with your own numbers so that you can see the impact of putting that $5 a month extra, or maybe it's at $50 a month, or maybe it's at $5,000 a month extra. But at the same time, it doesn't require you to put more money to pay down the debt. It's not simply because we've heard these strategies, pay it early, or pay your mortgage twice, pay your mortgage payment twice, or pay extra towards the principal. This is not that. Those are different strategies, and obviously people have been using that and they do work. This is something completely different.
Yeah, well, again, we're not we're not sacrificing savings at all in order to achieve this.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it very, very different.
Yeah.
I think the other item I think that's also really important to point out is that whatever the individual situation is, you're literally on an ongoing basis looking at where you are versus where you want to be and adjusting. It's like you're kind of regularly just recasting this. I have another client. He's a business consultant. And what happened to them was they shifted the timing they paid their bills to the 28th of the month. They call that dentist day. So by shifting the timing that they pay their bills, they sit down together once a month to see where they are. And literally every month they can see what the effect is.
I love it.
Right. And so she actually volunteered and said, this has actually made our marriage better.
Wow.
Because every month we do this check-in and we can see the progress and it excites us.
Right.
The other item that's really big that we haven't touched on yet is I'm a big believer in always thinking in terms of what can go wrong.
Right.
So if something was to go wrong, like for example, I can think of COVID, another couple I know. He had his hours cut back. They wanted to get rid of their mortgage, and so they had taken a 15-year mortgage. Well, now with cash flow tight, they're having a hard time pulling it off.
Right.
And so from that perspective, they went back to their bank, and the bank would not refinance their debt to a longer time frame. And so the phrase I've learned there is, banks are happy to help you when you don't need them.
That's right.
And why? Because now you're a higher risk, right? And banks don't like risk. And so the lesson that I also taught was, I can take a 30-year mortgage compared to a 15-year mortgage. Right. And using the strategy we're talking about, the payoff dates between the two of them applying this strategy is only 2 months difference.
Wow.
But in the one, if something happens, I have leeway.
Right.
The other one, I'm locked in. So that's the other thing that's really important to me, is creating a solution that acknowledges that things always don't go right as we anticipate. There may be hiccups, and when their hiccup comes, what's your fallback going to be?
Wow. That is so fire. I love that you said that. That's so true, because I think that it's easy to think, hey, I can make this payment today, but life's us. Unexpected things happen. And if we don't have that presence of mind to understand that, and we have a backup plan, that's when people do desperate things, right? That's why we see people who are doing things that they probably shouldn't be doing. Yep. And giving someone hope is priceless. There's no way to really quantify that when you see a family who's feeling overburdened and they just don't see their way out of it. Because, by the way, loan consolidation is not the answer. I hear this and it drives me batty. I talk about this all the time. Is a loan consolidation. A lot of times you hear people and they say, I paid off my debt. I consolidated my loans. No, you did not pay off your debt. You changed from one debt to another debt.
Yeah. You're kicking the can down the road.
You kick the can down the road and maybe it's more manageable. But what does the average person do? Let's say they consolidate their debt and now their payments went from $1,000 a month to $500 a month. What does the average person do with that extra $500? Did they save and invest? Did they put it away for the rainy day? Did they start paying themselves first? No. What do? They go out.
They pick up more spending
and buy another car.
Yeah.
They find something else that they need. Right? It miraculously appears up.
I will frequently use a consolidation process of giving somebody some added flexibility, but we then use that to the strategy so that they can see how quickly they can get it paid off. Like, again, the family that I spoke about who made over a couple $100,000. We did a consolidation in over 5 years. That gave them cash. And now with that step, they're going to be able to pay off the $100,000 in just under 3 years.
Right.
And just save them all kinds of interest in the process.
Yeah.
Right. So the other one would similarly be, I just did one yesterday, somebody who was looking at consolidation versus a 21-month 0% interest with a 3% transfer fee. In their case, the transfer fee would be about $399. Doing it with a consolidation and being able to pay that consolidation off in just 4 months.
Wow.
The interest cost was going to be $383. The total interest cost. This particular scenario, they chose the 21 months because of the hiccup. They have 21 months, 0% interest. They know they're going to pay it off, but just to give themselves a little bit of leeway, then they're electing to do that instead. And they'll still have it paid off in the same time frame, but again, they're just giving themselves a little bit of a cushion in the event that something unexpected comes up.
Yeah. And it really is a partnership process, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to have their agreements to this. You're never really forcing people into something. It's really about having the dialogue, the conversation, and realistically and reasonably, what can you exchange? Where can you cut back? And your mind thinks so creatively about this. I've never met anyone who not only has a system, but you understand it so well that you can find pockets of leverage in different areas that I think most people don't even think about, like the savings account, for example. So you're really just the master of that. That's why I call you the debt master.
I like the financial transformer better, but I'll give it to you. My developer for my app, he tells me, he says, I'm always amazed at just the creative ways you've learned to use the app of things that I never even considered before. And that tends to modify the roadmap, our software roadmap, in order to accommodate some of these little tweaks that I come up with, to your point.
Yeah, it's evolving. And I love that because it's not as static. And, a lot of times people don't even think of not just the impact of the debt, but what is the impact of inflation? The average family, if you've got a savings account that's sitting there static and you think it's not doing anything, you're losing buying power on that. Probably 20, 30% in this past year. So if we're not doing something active, if we're not keeping our money vibrant and moving and earning, then we're going down. We're losing money that we don't even understand it. Again, it's that invisible loss that we won't realize until we go to the store and try to purchase that same gallon of milk that's now I don't know, $6, $7 a gallon or something like that.
Yeah.
So where can people reach you? What's their first step? If I'm coming to you and I'm thinking, gosh, I've got lots of debt, or maybe I have debt that's manageable, but I just want to be ahead of the curve. I'd like to retire in 5 to 10 years. And I know I've got student loans. I know I have credit cards, mortgage, and car notes. Where should they start? Where's the first step that you would take them in the process?
Well, I think the first thing, there's another element of this that is probably the most important, and I've said it already once in our conversation, but it first of all has to be one where people have the ability to address question marks and doubts that they must have, because this is about trust.
Yeah.
Colleagues such as yourself, Leah, who they'll refer me a case, and when I speak to them and I ask them, "What made you call me?" and they'll say, "Well, so and so said you can be trusted," and I get given the term, "I'm a genius." I hear that a lot these days, and I don't think I'm a genius. I just simply think that I have some intense curiosity.
Yeah.
And the solution's really simple. So, if somebody that, wants to send me a text, my phone number is 360-510-6919. I live in Washington State. My email address is Dennis, DENNIS, at cash, CASH, map, consulting.com.
Nice.
Can also visit my website at cashmapapp.com. I also have a YouTube channel, which is Cash Map Consulting, that has just, all kinds of material that you can look at.
That's awesome. I love that. You got a lot of good stuff, a lot of good endorsements. Listen to some of the endorsements about the people who really experience this and the transformation that it's made in their life. And two things I want to touch on before we go. One is, this isn't just for somebody who's an employee. This can also be used for business owners, self-employed people, people who have large amounts of money. This is definitely a way to truly leverage your income as well. And also, I would implore anyone who is in mortgages, if you are a wealth management financial planner, reach out to Dennis. This is transformational with the information that you can provide to your clients. And imagine being able to show them strategies where they truly can be totally out of debt. Because if we only address the assets and the wealth building, that's only one part of the conversation. I talk about the wall of wealth. Pick up my free ebook and you're going to see that there's 10 layers, and that is just the basic plan. The wall of wealth 2 is coming out, and that's for business owners. So with that being said, thank you so much, Dennis, for sharing your genius with us today. It was an amazing pleasure, and I trust that you have many, many families that you are going to be helping, because debt is, like I said in the beginning, it's a dream killer for a lot of people. They get hopeless and they just think that there's no way out. You truly do save lives, you save marriages, and you give families hope. So for that, I bless you. I honor you. I'm so proud to call you a friend as well as a colleague. And that's our edition of the Wealthy Wednesday. We will see you all next time, next week. And we'll see you all at the top, because we all know it's way too crowded at the bottom.